We have a problem, Batman. Gotham needs you again.
Wolverine is a century of violence compressed into 5 feet of adamantium, laced rage, a man who has forgotten more wars than most people know existed. Logan operates on primal instincts haunted by decades of loss, betrayal, and systematic torture that turned him into a living weapon with claws for hands and no clear memories of who he used to be. The contingency protocol must account for someone whose healing factor makes conventional injury meaningless, whose enhanced senses make stealth nearly impossible, and whose adamantium skeleton makes him nearly indestructible in close combat. His greatest danger isn't his physical capabilities, but his complete unpredictability. He might save innocent lives or accidentally endanger them, might follow orders or go completely rogue, might remember his humanity or surrender to the animal inside. Fighting Wolverine means fighting someone who has survived everything the world could throw at him and decided that the only response to pain is dealing it back tenfold. Healing factor makes traditional combat approaches completely useless, as Logan can recover from gunshot wounds, stab injuries, and even decapitation within minutes or hours, depending on the severity of damage. His regeneration works constantly, repairing cellular damage from aging, toxins, disease, and physical trauma while maintaining his body at peak physical condition despite being over a century old. The adamantium coating his skeleton means that even catastrophic damage to his vital organs won't stop him permanently, as his bones provide an unbreakable framework for his body to rebuild around. His healing extends to his brain, making him resistant to drugs, poisons, and psychological conditioning that would incapacitate normal humans. The strategy requires understanding that fighting Logan isn't about causing damage, but about preventing him from causing damage, using restraint and containment rather than injury and elimination. Enhanced senses turn him into a living tracking system that can follow scent trails for miles, hear conversations through walls, and detect lies through changes in heartbeat and body chemistry. His sensory capabilities exceed those of most animals, making him aware of approaching threats long before they become visible or audible to normal humans. These abilities also create vulnerabilities. Sensory overload through overwhelming stimuli can cause disorientation and pain, while specific scents or sounds can trigger traumatic memories that temporarily incapacitate him. The approach involves using his enhanced senses against him through carefully designed sensory attacks, environmental manipulation that creates false trails or masks real threats, and psychological triggers that exploit his fragmented memories. When his greatest advantages become sources of weakness, his tactical superiority becomes manageable vulnerability. What do you think, Alfred?
Master Bruce, Logan represents something profoundly tragic. A man who has lived long enough to lose everything he's ever cared about multiple times over. His violence isn't born from malice, but from a lifetime of watching people he protects die while he continues living, healing, fighting. His amnesia isn't just medical condition, but psychological defense against memories too painful to bear consciously. Perhaps the most strategic approach isn't trying to defeat him, but helping him remember why he chooses to fight for others despite all the loss he's experienced. Sometimes the most dangerous weapons are people who have forgotten they have anything left to lose, and the best way to handle them is reminding them what they're still fighting to protect.
Alfred's right that Logan's violence stems from trauma rather than malice, but that doesn't make him less dangerous when he snaps. His protective instincts are admirable, but they're coupled with a hair, trigger temper, and a tendency to solve problems with claws first and questions later. The strategy acknowledges his fundamental decency, while preparing for the moments when his animal instincts override his human judgment. This involves creating environments where his protective nature can be channeled constructively, providing him with clear objectives that align with his moral code, and establishing support systems that can help him maintain emotional stability during high-stress situations. When his rage has positive outlets, his destructive potential decreases significantly. What do you think, Robin?
Logan's like that one teacher who's seen every trick students try to pull and just doesn't have patience for nonsense anymore. Except instead of detention, he hands out claw marks. He's not actually mean, he's just tired of people lying to him, betraying him, or trying to use him as a weapon. The guy's been alive for over 100 years and spent most of it being someone else's lab rat or soldier. No wonder he's grumpy all the time. But here's the weird thing. He keeps choosing to help people, even though people keep disappointing him. That says something good about who he really is underneath all the anger.
Robin's insight reveals Logan's core contradiction. Despite centuries of betrayal and manipulation, he continues choosing to protect others, suggesting that his humanity remains intact beneath the animal rage. This understanding shifts the approach from treating him as a threat to managing him as an ally whose instincts occasionally conflict with tactical objectives. The strategy involves providing him with honest information, clear mission parameters, and teammates who can earn his trust through consistent actions rather than empty promises. When he knows he's not being manipulated or lied to, his cooperation improves dramatically and his violent outbursts become more predictable and preventable. Berserker Rage represents both his most dangerous combat mode and his greatest tactical weakness, as losing conscious control makes him unable to distinguish between enemies and allies during combat. The rage state increases his already formidable physical capabilities while eliminating strategic thinking, making him a devastating but indiscriminate weapon that attacks anything perceived as a threat. His triggers include specific sounds, smells, or situations that remind him of past traumas, particularly medical experimentation or threats to people he's trying to protect. The strategy involves identifying and avoiding his known triggers while preparing containment methods for when rage episodes occur despite precautions. This includes developing tranquilizer compounds that can affect his enhanced metabolism, creating containment areas that can withstand his strength while protecting bystanders, and establishing protocols for safely approaching him during recovery periods when his rational mind reasserts control. Memory fragmentation creates opportunities for psychological manipulation, but also makes him unpredictable in ways that complicate both hostile and friendly interactions. His amnesia means he doesn't remember many of his past relationships, training, or experiences, making him vulnerable to false information about his history, while also preventing him from learning from previous mistakes. Different personality fragments surface under stress, sometimes revealing skills or knowledge he doesn't consciously possess, while other times triggering emotional responses to situations he can't consciously remember. The approach involves careful management of information about his past, avoiding topics that might trigger traumatic memories while providing context that helps him understand his current situation. When his fragmented memories become assets rather than liabilities, his effectiveness increases while his psychological instability decreases. Adamantium poisoning provides a long-term weakness that grows more severe over time, as the metal coating his bones slowly releases toxins that his healing factor must constantly work to neutralize. This ongoing battle between poison and regeneration weakens him gradually, reducing his healing speed and overall physical capabilities as he ages. The poisoning also affects his mental state, potentially contributing to his memory problems and emotional instability. The strategy involves accelerating this process through exposure to specific toxins that interact with adamantium, electromagnetic fields that can heat the metal in his body, or medical interventions that can overwhelm his healing factor's ability to cope with the ongoing poisoning. When his greatest defensive asset becomes a source of constant damage, his legendary durability becomes manageable vulnerability. Pack dynamics exploit his need for belonging and family connections, understanding that despite his loner persona, Logan functions best when he's part of a team that provides emotional stability and tactical support. His relationships with groups like the X-Men provide him with purpose and restraint that prevent his more destructive impulses from taking control. Isolating him from these support networks makes him more dangerous, but also more vulnerable to psychological manipulation and emotional instability. The strategy involves either strengthening his connections to positive influences that can moderate his behavior, or severing those connections to make him more predictable in his desperation to reconnect. When his need for pack bonds becomes stronger than his independent streak, his actions become more predictable and his cooperation more reliable.